Hello and welcome to Dating, and Relationships. I'm your host, Julie Grimm. I am a healer and spiritual guide in the Modern Mystery School. And today I have Jessica Rea. She is a healer who focuses on transformation and change. I'm so excited to have you. Hello, welcome, Jessica.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's my honor. So we have so much to get into, but first let's kind of orient with our folks. I'd like to hear, what were your main challenges in healing, specifically around love and dating on your spiritual journey?
Oh, on my spiritual journey, it's been quite tricky because I feel like when we're connected to such a strong path with a vision and a purpose and a mission, it's hard to call on partners that aren't aligned with that particular vision, purpose, and mission. So I've been a lot more selective than I was prior to becoming a spiritual teacher, a healer. And I've definitely found myself kind of flowing more into my own of my self-healing and finding people that align with that. So prior to that, I definitely was delving in kind of anyone and everyone who would give me love and attention and had a big part. And then when I started realizing I was attracting the men who mirrored my addictions. And that was a challenge because I started calling in men who were showing me what I still needed to heal. And I was there. I was there spiritually. And I still had parts of my addiction roaring free. However, I had reached a certain level of my awakening and consciousness where I was able to acknowledge that my partner was mirroring what was unhealed in me.
Right. So
Yeah.
rather than project it onto them and say they're not good enough, they need to change, it was like, well, what inside of me has called this person forward? But when
Mm.
that happens, like, do you feel like that's something that you stay with them through the alchemy, the transformation? Or is it also kind of like, well, no, I'm at a different space and I see that you're mirroring where I need to shift, but I'm going to do that on my own? Or
I think it's definitely personally dependent and where you're at in your life. I know for myself in particular, my last relationship I had was with a beautiful man. Oh my word, what a sweet soul. He struggled really with addiction, and I'd kind of got over the main hump of my addiction. I had the residual behaviors coming up here and there, but I'd gone over the big hump. I'd left the drugs, I'd left the alcohol. I had it still there. I wasn't completely teetotal sober, but I spent multiple years on my addiction recovery to the point where I I could still be around people and things like that, and it wasn't a problem for me. And it was a part-time experience with this man. When I met him, he was gorgeous, of that feeling. And the first time we connected intimately, he kind of blurted out, "I love you," like the first time. And we connected in that really deep spiritual realm. And he was amazing. However, what happened was is I acknowledged that he was starting to mirror these behaviors. And I was already a healer at this time. I wasn't in the mystery school yet. I was practicing Reiki and intuitive healing and crystal healing and coaching. And at one point I did say to him, like, hey, I see where your patterns are coming up. And, like, this is where I'm at in life. And if you want to walk this path with me, you have a choice. If you want to walk this path with me, I need you to put your best effort into being your best self and your highest self, and we walk this path together. And if that's not something that you want, then we will need to go our separate ways. And he was lovely, and I didn't want to let go of him. I had an attachment to him. However, at the same time, I still had the courage to say these things. And with the new age terminology of like soulmates and twins, whatever it was, then I basically explained to him, like, hey, like, we're walking this path together right now, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to walk this path together forever. and you have a choice. If you want to better yourself and that's something you want to prioritize in your life, then I'm happy to walk this path with you. So I think it's very personally dependent in which way you really want to cultivate your life. Because I know people who are traveling who say, hey, next year I'm starting this big job. I've got time this year. I'm okay to have a couple of relationships here and there, and they're consciously working through their things. If that's your choice, then sure. And I know for like myself, at the moment, I'm not seeking anything outside of myself because I'm doing the work on myself in a different way, in a Kabbalistic way, in a ritual master way, in Sattvic healing, self-healing, celibacy, all of these ways. And I think it would be very unfair of me to expect someone to meet me where I'm at right now when I'm, kind of everywhere. So yeah, completely personally dependent on what, your individual journey is, because it can go both ways. It can be incredibly toxic and it can be incredibly healing.
Absolutely. There's a big train that just went by. I don't know if you could hear that. Sorry. Cut off
It's okay.
piece of you. What you were saying. So I'm curious. I want to hear more. You kind of alluded to it that you're in this celibacy phase. Can you tell us
Yeah.
that?
Wow. I never thought I'd end up there. I'm a pretty open sexually human being. I have an incredibly strong sex drive, which I've cultivated into my creative drive. And I understood that quite early. I started learning about Tantra, maybe not so much the way that it's taught out there, but the way that I learned it within myself. I never went to a school. I kind of practiced it with my partner. I taught my partner at a really young age, and I found myself teaching Tantra to myself, which was really amazing. And I created that experience for myself, and I thought it was really sacred and beautiful. And I then learned that the cultivation of sexual energy and spiritual energy is the same source, the hara, the sacral chakra, our magic centers. And, while I was going through my spiritual awakening, I started feeling all this energy there. And, to discern between sexual trauma, pain, sexual energy, creative energy, fear, it was so difficult for me. So I was just really confused and quite scared.
I think
And
most people are, honestly, like
mm,
most of us
mm,
are, because like to your point, we're not really taught, and then what exists out there isn't really, is it clean? How educated is it? Where is it coming from? So I think
mm,
there's huge lack of clarity about around sexual
mm,
energy, around exactly what you're talking about. Like, oh, is that my desire or their desire, or
mm.
trauma?
Exactly. And I was so sensitive. Like there could be someone in the room next door and I would feel their frequency in so I had this really big awakening, and I'd collected a lot as well, and my magic center was so wide open and I didn't have any control over it. So I did little spurts of celibacy here and there because I was like, hey, I actually can't have anyone in my field right now. There was trauma and sexual healing I was going through from past abortions, from, you know, sexual abuse situations, as well as really opening myself up to new partners, and maybe not always having safe sexual partners too. So I found myself coming into the mystery school with the idea of what I wanted in a partner, and I wasn't attracting anything near, not even close to what I wanted. So the acknowledgement of I had to do the work on myself prior to bringing any sort of man into my life was quite evident. Now, I'm not saying celibacy is for everyone, and I'm not saying, oh, I've had a bad experience, so let me cut off from sex completely. I chose to become celibate because I wanted to clear and cut cords. I was sexually active from quite a young age. I had an amazing time and I explored beautifully. So I really wanted to kind of clear out all of these things as I'm transforming and changing, receiving initiations and going down the healing path. I'm changing so much, but I could feel that I was still holding on to things that weren't serving me. So celibacy for me has been a container I've been able to create for myself to clean, to purify, to let go of, and to strengthen my own life force energy, to be able to really understand that is mine, that is not mine. Because I had all these thoughts in my head and feelings and behaviors, and I just clocked one day, I was like, that's not mine. That's really not mine. So that's the main part of it. The other part is I'm a kind of all or nothing girl, you know. I When I have a man in my life, he's, my other half. And I love to serve. I love to serve him and I want to be served by him. And that takes time and effort. And right now, I don't have capacity for that with the studies within the mystery school and within my life and my career. So I decided to take this year for myself to commit fully to celibacy. And I have been on a few dates to meet new versions of myself and to see new people and to see what's actually out there and who am I attracting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Been
What am I
hit
magnetizing? Yeah.
Right, and it's been hit and miss. Oh my gosh, the misses were big ones, and the hits were great, great lessons. So, yeah, so that's my journey with celibacy at the moment. It's not my first time doing it. However, this time doing it while being in Kabbalah, I'm meeting a version of myself. I never knew I knew she existed, but I hadn't met her. And it's been an incredibly powerful experience.
It's so amazing when you're talking. I have 125 questions, so I'll try to narrow it down. First one, are you like, is there a time frame? So you said a year. Where are you within this year? Is this new? Have you been on this for a little bit?
So my year started in September. I had a sexual partner in who
You're almost
I,
done.
well, the tree only ends at the end of October. So I said to the tree that I would wait until I've crossed over. So for those listening who don't know what Kabbalah is, that's a 10-month container and spiritual journey revealing the secrets of the world and within yourself. So this container ends at the end of October. So I thought, let me put it into the tree. And believe me, I've tried to go against my wishes of it. And the tree's like, no, you shall not pass. So I'm like, right,
Wow,
okay.
so powerful. When I
So
like, I love that you're working with the tree because you're talking about a lot about container, and it is so much about our healthy energetic boundaries that keep us safe to really do that deep healing and clearing and purging work. Where if we have a weak boundary, like is so common with any sort of addiction and even not addiction, but when we exchange energy with another, right, we're taking on something
mm,
consciously or unconsciously from them, and that bringing that into the container, it's like, well, I don't know what's in my mix anymore. I added a dash of that spice and I don't know what's in that spice. It could have been great or it could have been a mess. We don't know, right? And then really that purity that you're holding for yourself is amazing.
and you know what they say about too many cooks in a kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I've hit, so I'll be doing 13 months. I don't know if I meet someone for sure. And
That's
if not,
magical. 13 is a magical number.
right. And yeah, it's not a thing. Like I went on a date this week and I was like, oh, maybe I can, maybe this is the right time for me. Maybe, I've told the tree it's fine. I'm happy with where I've come. And I was actually like, I don't need it, and I still have that beautiful energy within me. And I've learned to now transmute very strongly the sexual energy into the spiritual energy, into the healing, just sending it from the hara into the hands. And just it's amazing, so I've definitely found a way to cultivate. And I've also created a new relationship with sex for me, with finding a partner and what it is I truly wish. And I don't think I would have reached that without connecting with this container of celibacy.
That's amazing. It's interesting what you're saying too. So, for people who are listening, maybe some are in the mystery school, some have never even heard of the modern mystery school. This might not be the best PR, but so I was initiated almost 10 years ago. And
Wow.
up until initiation, I had long-term intimate relationships. Dating was never really something, it just happened. I met people And then probably like 2 years after I went to Healers Academy, which is the second step of initiation, I stopped. Like you said, like I couldn't really meet people that I
Mm,
would want a partner, but that the people who were coming forward, there was either a lesson or there wasn't, it didn't stick. Things didn't stick. And so,
mm,
largely against my own desires, I have been single now, like a large part of 7 years, which
mm,
is crazy because I was kind of like serial monogamist before all of that.
mm,
And it's exactly what you're talking about, this really this call to come back to yourself and
mm,
then continue to come back to yourself. And you go, what about now? What about this? No, come back to yourself. And,
mm,
I sort of have a joke. We talk about the hierarchy of light, who are really like our spiritual guides,
mm,
helping us in the spiritual dimension and keeping us, preventing us sometimes from making really terrible mistakes,
mm.
would block me from things. They're like, no, 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 sweetie, no, no. And there were a few times where I like got what I wanted, and I
Yeah,
realized that I was being saved by it not working out. The minute I
100%.
got this thing that I thought I wanted, I was like, oh, that's why there's been delays and obstacles and this and that and the other thing. It's like, oof. The other way I put that is all that glitters is not gold,
Oh
right?
no.
So yeah, we see on the surface a lot. We're seeing on the surface, or the possibility of what could be, or maybe we're not even really seeing with our spiritual, we're more feeling with our instincts, which isn't to say that our instincts are bad. However, we can't simply be led around by our urges, definitely not our
100%.
sexual urges.
Oh no.
Gonna lead us into really interesting territory. So yeah, coming into greater refinement around what is it that I really want, what am I manifesting, and what is that showing me about really the thoughts, the patterns, the habits, the energy, the frequency that I'm holding today. And if it's not what I desire, then what sort of work do I need to do internally to transmute that to
Wow,
be
you've nailed it
frequency
there.
match? Yeah.
Mm.
So that might not, listeners, okay, still Empower Thyself Initiation is amazing. I'm not saying you're going to be single for 7 years. I'm just saying if you are, it's going to be healing.
Yeah, you know what? You're so right about that. Like for the most part of the past 7 years, I've also been single. Personally, by choice, I've been my travel itinerary of the last 3 years has been like 14 countries, backpacking, this, that, the other. Like to have any man try keep up with that, it would be completely unfair. But prior to that, I wasn't attracting. I have had smaller relationships within the past 7 years, but essentially my last like fully committed relationship, in which was over the duration of 2 years of love and growth and things like that, has been 7 years as well. And I do sometimes say, oh well, when would the next one be? And my self-doubt can come in and be like, oh well, I always end up in situationships with beautiful men who want to help me grow, and I wish to help them grow as well. However, we both know from the beginning you are not the one. However, this is a beautiful dynamic, and God has guided us together for this period of time. It can be completely platonic, or it can be really intimate, sacred, and sexual, or it can be romantic. There are so many different layers to what relationships can be, and I've caught myself crying, why am I not the one to get the one now? And it's for those looking into empower themselves and things like coming onto the path and taking that first step in your journey. I am the one for me. Self-love had to come first, and when I took my first step onto this path, I didn't have a lot of it. I had the capacity to love myself, and I had the ideas to be able to implement it. However, I didn't know how to do it. And empower thyself was the first step for me, which helped me see the divinity, really the divinity, because I'd done all the plant medicine, shamanism prior to that. The drug-induced psychedelic awakening experiences. And I that was not self-love for me, you know. And since I met the path, and I've come along what's coming on to just over 3 years now along the path of Know Thyself and Empower Thyself and Healers Academy and the Ritual Master initiations, etc. You know, I am cultivating self-love, and I understand now why I haven't been in a relationship, because we can only meet, well, no, people can only meet us as deep as we've met ourselves, and vice versa. And I seek depth. I seek depth in which I know where I've gone, you know. And so that takes someone who's done a remarkable amount of work on themselves. So when I was with the plant medicine shamanism and the drug taking, I wasn't able to really, I reached depth, but it wasn't the authentic, organic, and pure depth that I have within myself at the moment.
Yeah, it's reminding me, even preparing for this call, I think I mentioned before we started the call that I was remembering my days of drug use, because it's strange. I don't really talk about it often because I've been sober now 7+ years. And when I did drugs, I didn't become sober from drugs. It was more honestly, well, weed and alcohol, but I did party drugs. And I remember I took Molly just as a party. I was not looking for anything spiritual whatsoever, just to have a good time.
Mm,
And I had this profound, like, euphoric experience, and I remember being with other people and feeling so connected to them, but then in the next moment realizing like they weren't having that experience that I was. And so, not to say, I was having the moment that I was having, and yet it wasn't really the depth that I desired, because exactly what you said, I wanted that shared. I wanted to be there with, in that same place, somebody else. And when we do drugs, we're doing substances, from my experience, they do blow us open, wide open, but not in a reliable way. And if we're doing it, with other people or however, they might not be experiencing anything on the same
mm,
level that you are too. So in our kind of euphoria or hallucinatory, whatever it happens to be, um, we feel that connectedness because yes, we are one. We are. This is the truth that we blow open, ready for it or not. And yet, sharing that with others might not happen. And for me, from my experience, never happened
mm,
reliably with other
mm,
people. And more than that, like as you're saying, the inner, you know, I experienced through drugs the outer oneness, but was fully lacking the inner oneness,
mm,
which is not the appropriate sequence, right? Ideally, on a spiritual path, you harness the inner wholeness. And from that foundation, you open to the all. But because and again, I was not seeking spiritually, I was just doing it for fun, and it happened. Uh, Experienced the oneness of all, and then had to do serious backtrack. Serious, let's go back to the elementary first steps here, because this is not one, not even remotely one, right? There are so many compartments within myself that I had shut out and held back. And that was it was interesting because that was the beginning of my spiritual journey into the mystery school, was
mm.
roughly around then.
That's amazing. That's really powerful. You know, I really feel that I feel that I can relate on a level when it came to the shamanic drug taking. As you know, as a love addict, as a drug addict, as a addict of substances and behaviors and codependency, when I was in my addiction, I wanted to get on to the next thing, you know, the next mood or mind altering substance. And as the negative ego can play these beautiful tricks on us, you know, I kept on going on to the next thing, next thing. And yes, they got better. My behaviors were better, I was not crashing cars. I was not overdosing. I was not having sex with, people I didn't know. I wasn't stepping outside of myself as much. However, I was still doing it. And I think for me, I'm not going to say that every experience I had on plant medicine was horrible, and every experience that I had with a psychedelic drug to enhance my awakening was not helpful. I can't say that because it led me to the mystery school. It led me to the path that I'm on right now. What happened is I had a shamanic awakening where I was at a very low level of self-worth, self-love, self-care, and I was taking mood and mind altering substances. And I entered an illusion. Some people may say psychosis, people may say spiritual initiation. I can't put a label on it because it's not entirely sensible. However, I entered a period of my life where nothing made sense. And it happened for a really long time. And I learned to discern in this crazy world that I was in, that even though I was seeing terribly scary things and all these things, I was actually showing as within, so without. I was experiencing what was within on the external world. And at that period of time, I was taking drugs, I was partying, all of these things. And now I'd like go, oh no, I want to be a plant medicine shaman. I want to take drugs to access the spiritual realms because I felt I needed things outside of myself in order to access within myself. And for a period of time, I did. And I took the drugs and I did it with shaman and I did it on my own. And I went into the forests and the jungles and I did it, on my own. And I dove deep. However, there was always a come down. There was always something negative. There was a karmic attachment. And I was wise enough and sensitive enough to start reading these situations. However, the attachment was still there. I still wanted something. And to let go of shamanism with the use of drugs for me has been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do because I got to believe in myself and my magic through this way, and to let go of that entirely and to be like, I am strong enough without these plant medicine drugs, without the attachment to something, was really scary. And I used the plant medicine drug ibogaine, which is a really, really loud voice in your head and a very, very strong drug. And it's meant to cut addictions. It kind of, for me, what a life activation does is what ibogaine was meant to do. However, the drug and myself did not want to work together. We tried, and eventually the cord was cut. And that was the last of them. I tried all the, like I did the Cambo, the Sananga, the Hape, even cacao to a certain extent. I tried all of these medicines and I was working with spirits of them. And I even at one point, I wasn't even taking them, but the spirit was still there and it was an attachment to power then. It wasn't even attachment to the substance or the mood or the mind altering thing. It was attachment to the power. Then I had to cut the cords with plants that I wasn't taking anymore. And that was bizarre. And eventually, over time, I was able to discern the voices in the head and the guidance and lessen it and lessen it and lessen it. And this happened with Sophic Ray Reiki healings, initiations, empower thyself, King Solomon mind region healing. That was really powerful because of using so many drugs and having so many illusions in my head and attachments to partners. It allowed me to detach. It allowed me to go through 10 incredible healing sessions in which I was able to clear pathways in my mind, which were all entangled in the beginning. So it was really, really deep because my codependency with the medicines and with the power that I had cultivated for myself was what was keeping me back. And it was only me standing in my own way. Now, that all comes down to self-love for me. And love addiction, essentially, at the end of the day, is a lack of self-love, due to neglect, trauma, abandonment, for me, of course. And I'd recognize this. I used to be a chairwoman of a sex and love addictions meeting at the age of 18. I
Wow.
like I got out of rehab and I was the chairwoman of 3 meetings, and I was running these things because I was so passionate about helping people. But I kept my addiction safe because I was the chairwoman of an addictions meeting. So I acknowledge that like we were talking earlier, it's like I just jumped from something to another, and yes, it was still in the healing realm, but it still wasn't serving me and it was keeping me there. So now letting go of all of these things, and some people might look at what I do as extreme, for sure. It's not easy to take away everything that I've cultivated for myself to come back to a clean slate. Is it completely necessary? I'm going to leave that up to you. For me, I needed it, and it's been so fulfilling. And I'm not staying here forever. Oh no, no thanks. I can't wait to live an abundantly beautiful relationship with a sexual partner, with a lover in the future. However, I had to let go of all of these things because I was also taking myself on a journey to truly understand attachment, because it's something that I want to help people through. And I can't say I'm an addictions healer or I help people with negative habit removal if I'm not able to truly understand it for myself. That's my perspective and my point of view. So now letting go of the plant medicine shamanism and the love addiction and sex addiction and all of these very scary but beautiful experiences that I've had in life, I can now breathe and be like, okay, I get it now. My soul took me on a journey. I didn't have the tools at the time, so I kept on bashing my head, but I was still guiding myself. I still was like, hey, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And yes, okay, it's not the Molly and the ecstasy and the acid, and it's not the plant medicine shamanism, and it's not the new age spiritual techniques, and it's not spiritual bypassing, but it is truly knowing yourself. So take away everything that doesn't serve you. Everything. I'm talking attachment to a mug, to a color, to a number. Taking, we awaken spiritually to signs and numbers and things, and we learn to read, and we can even get attached to that. So really cleaning ourselves through meditation, cleaning ourselves through initiation and practices, and really coming back to self and being like, if I can love myself as this version of myself, which she was overweight. This was the other version of me. I was overweight, depressed. Then I became anorexic. I was anxious. I was in an illusion. But I looked myself in the mirror and said, now let's get back to normal. And it's been about a 3-year journey since I've done that. I can say today, like, whoo, that's awesome. And I can help people now. I can really help people, not prior to this whole exploration and be like, I can help you. Like, sure, I can help you with Reiki. We can shift some energy, etc. Like now I can really help you face your battles, and I can stand there with you and in the trenches, because I know how hard I worked to get here, and I know how much encouragement it took me in certain periods of time. And I've been able to say, I want to do that for others. Yeah.
You've transformed, and you're here to help other people transform, to go down into the depths. And the other word that was coming through was purity. So we study the lineage of King Solomon is a hermetic lineage. And when we think about hermetics, it's like a hermetically sealed box. We're talking about the container. Okay, we don't want to be hermetically sealed forever, because yes, we do want to sample the universe. But when we do come into that purity, and that is again the purity of the lineage, and we come into that container, like you're saying, that's where we can start to come to know ourselves, where we can take off the masks. And you're talking about essentially with the plant medicine, and maybe even with the love addiction, taking back your power in terms of, I'm the magic. I am the center of magic in my life, the creative epicenter, and what I am is magic, right? I don't need it from out here. And I am love. I don't need it
Mm.
from out here. And reclaiming that energy within yourself, it's hugely, hugely powerful. we again talk in the mystery school and in the Empower Thyself class, it's about empowerment. And one of the main keys for most people is coming back into that personal responsibility, that personal power. I am the king or queen of my life.
Mm.
I'm in charge here. I'm not a victim. And I am not only that, I'm divine.
Yeah, for sure. That level of putting myself first because I'm worthy of it, the level of divinity and purity. And I'm not saying that like I am like, I know my worth. I know I get to choose who gets to come into my life, whether it's for 2 minutes, 2 hours, or 10 years, or the rest of my life. I get to choose. And I want someone to be the quality in which the life I wish to live. And they are out there. There's incredible men, there's incredible women out there doing the work, being of service and being in power. There are not as many of them as other people who are maybe not doing the work, who are on different paths. So it's not going to be found as regularly. So rather have 7 years of self-exploration, deep diving, maybe a few dates here and there, whatever it is that comes along your path. However, for me, I'd rather have one incredibly powerful relationship than 10 where I've given parts of myself away and now I have to spend multiple years bringing it all back. And I think it's about finding that healthy equilibrium between devotion to myself and devotion to someone else. And everyone is a mirror. Every single person is a mirror. And as we were saying earlier, when a man does come into my life and I see, you know, there are things I want to learn from him and I want to teach him as well. I can work with that. And I'm really happy to do that because it's been an incredible journey. However, there might be that person where you're like, hey, I could do this forever. I can work with these flaws and I accept this person for who they are. And I think that's the healthy equilibrium instead of saying like, oh, and also there's this shadow to that, like no one's a fix me project. I really don't like that kind of approach of, oh, I can fix him. As healers we're like, oh, no, it's you got to meet each other halfway. So I'm really excited. Couple last months of celibacy and the spiritual studies that I'm currently doing and harnessing the tools that I've been taught over this time and really, I can say I very much am so grateful because wow, the feeling I have inside this love it's a new feeling to me and I'm really, really, really grateful.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I know a lot of people who are listening can probably relate to different aspects of what you shared, and there was so much wisdom that came through. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Anybody who is listening, I'll have details about how to connect with Jessica below. But if you want to share any top tips, ways that people can get in touch with you if they feel called.
Amazing. Yeah, of course. So I'm predominantly based in London. However, I also branch down to South Africa and I do a little bit of European and American travel, but predominantly based in London. So in-person healings in London and in the whole of the United Kingdom. My website I will give to you to be able to make available, but it's jessicareahealing.com. And then, yeah, Instagram's the same, Facebook's the same. All the social media is all the same. Jessica Rea Healing. Pop me a message if you want to chat. I do free meditations. I offer an incredible one-on-one service just to connect with you and see what I can do to help you and see if we're the right people to work together. And if not, I've got an amazing team of healers worldwide. So if I'm not in your area, then I can certainly find someone who I trust that will be able to hold you that is closer to you. So yeah, please. Oh, and I have a podcast, the Elemental Podcast, so which I would love to invite you onto very soon as well, so we can discuss all things Julie, and yeah, all things Jules, and this would be, yeah, on Spotify. That's pretty much it.
Wonderful. So happy to have you. Thank you so much for sharing so much transformation and beauty. bringing
Thank you
that
so
love
much.
back. So
Thank you.
thank you. And thank you to our listeners.
Thank you.